You know what's so interesting when talking about college football realignment? We've already declared which teams are going to stand out in their new conferences in 2024, whether it be Oregon in the Big Ten, SMU in the ACC, Utah and Arizona in the Big 12, and naturally, because they just made it to the college football playoff, Texas is supposed to shred its stuff in the SEC. Which brings me to the question, why are we not talking enough about Oklahoma? Like, I know that they're not the favorites to win the SEC, but they did some good things in year two underneath Brent Venables, and they seem built to at least stand a chance in the new conference. So today, let's break down what our expectations should be for Oklahoma moving forward. But if you are new here, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. Leave a comment telling me your thoughts on Oklahoma's future with Brent Venables. Do they stand a chance as a dark horse in the SEC? Are they going to come back down to earth and really have some difficult decisions to make? What's in store in Norman for 2024? Tell your friends, your family, your mortal enemies, best of bros, college football aficionados, SEC fans, and Oklahoma faithful everywhere about this channel, because we're on the race and eventually will be the #1 YouTube show talking college football daily. Follow me on social media, Twitter, X, Instagram, slide in the DMs, ask me a question at Mr. Cole Thompson. But that way, conversations surrounding our favorite sport never have to stop flowing. Oklahoma is going to get the short end of the stick because they weren't the favorites. They weren't a team that made it to Arlington, and they weren't a team that went to the college football playoff. But when you look at where the program resides right now, there is a lot of positivity. You did lose your offensive coordinator, Jeff Lebby. You lost a few offensive linemen. You lose a few key defensive pieces. But this is Oklahoma we're talking about. This is a program built on its pedigree and poise. They demand excellence, and they respect the fact that people fear them in the Big 12. And that's going to be the same mantra they carry over to the SEC. I look at this Oklahoma team and I say, I understand why we are selling them short. But are we not going to talk about what moves were made last offseason? So they finished with a 10-2 record during the regular season. They beat Texas, their only loss in conference play at Red River. They did drop a game to Kansas, which was pretty brutal. And the Bedlam game was always going to be a toss-up because it's a rivalry. But the offense was humming. They had a lot of positivity at wide receiver. Running back Dylan Gabriel was phenomenal. Defensively, they were in a good place building off of last season. Actually finished second in all of college football in turnovers. They were phenomenal at flying to the football. And that's an area of strength for them when you look going into next season. Yes, the offense is losing some key pieces, but the defense isn't. The defense is returning a slew of talented players, including Ethan Downs, including Nick Stutzman, including Billy Bowman. All three were difference makers the second that they arrived in Norman, and they have been flourishing underneath Brent Venables' defense. So those are going to be the guys that set the tone. Meanwhile, you also still have a young up-and-comer like Deshaun McCullough. You also still have young names on this roster that could end up being something of promise and potential, like Kip Lewis, like Lewis Carter. There's reasons for optimism in Norman when it comes to the defensive side. And of course, you got one of the best play callers to do it. Offensively, you did lose pieces, but you did bring in a key element to the passing attack, Deion Burks. Most people probably don't know his name, but let me go ahead and explain. He was the #1 receiver last year for Purdue. He averaged over 13 yards per catch, 7 touchdowns in Big Ten play, and now he's got 2 more years of eligibility to hopefully be a #1 receiver in a conference where it just means more. He was on the radar for a slew of teams throughout college football. And so anybody out there that says, well, he didn't get 1,000 yards and they were on a team that were 4-8, just remember, Texas wanted this kid. Arkansas wanted this kid. Missouri was interested in him. So was Ole Miss. And so was a slew of other teams. So if he was good enough to play for those SEC schools, wouldn't you say he's good enough to play for you? Plus, you have a young emerging running back that you really like on your roster in Gavin Sauer. Pause. Rewind. Gavin Souchwick, probably still said that wrong, averaged 6.2 yards per play last year, 9 touchdowns. You can trust your run game, and then you have Jackson Arnold. The reason why Dylan Gabriel transferred was not because he wanted a fresh start. It was because he knew moving forward, I wasn't guaranteed the job. Arnold is a superstar. He is one of the pristine passers in the pocket that you want on your team. And given the time, I think he can turn out and be somewhat of a positive story. In fact, I could see him running the show throughout the entire landscape of college football in the next few years. You can't go ahead and take the bowl game and notice. I understand where most brains go when you think about it, but you can't throw it into the mix. The bowl game It's just like a toss-up. It's like a practice round for me because every situation is completely different. Some teams are going to be locked and loaded. They're going to have a full roster. Other teams are going to lose a ton of players in the portal and to the NFL draft. And for Arnold, there were a lot of mistakes made in that game. There were some highs, a lot of lows. Here's the good news. All are correctable. All are going to be able to adapt. And when you have an offensive coordinator like Seth Luttrell, who's taking over for Jeff Lebby, I don't really worry about that. I think that there is a reason why you don't hear anything negative about Jackson Arnold from the grand spectacle because you realize it was a bowl game. First start. You were thrown into a situation that was going to be lose-lose no matter what. You either win and the expectations go skyrocket through the ceiling and they never come down, or you lose and now morale's at an all-time low. People don't think that you're a good quarterback. And then there's the middle ground, which is where I think Arnold will be year one in the SEC. So the offense does have pieces, and they do have a stellar defense with veteran talent and emerging talent. Their schedule also is really bountiful in terms of how they start off the season. Games at home next year against Temple, then they take on Houston, then they take on Tulane. Tulane's a tough one. Tulane just got John Summerall as a head coach, and I've made this clear on multiple occasions. He is the number one coach in the group of five level, and now he can bide his time in New Orleans until some school makes him an offer he can't refuse. That will still be a tough game, especially with what you look at what the Green Wave have brought in via the transfer portal. But then they start off conference play at home against Tennessee. Josh Heupel, welcome back to Norman. I'm sure that's going to be a fun feeling for you, buddy. But regardless, that sets your tone moving forward. 4 games at home at Gaylord to start off the year. That's an opportunity for you to go 4-0. And it's an opportunity for you to measure your young quarterback opposite of another young quarterback, especially in conference play with Nico Iamaleava. You too could eventually be running this conference by 2025. After that, you still got Texas. After that, you have games against Auburn and South Carolina. Then you have your next test, Ole Miss on the Grove. That is going to be a game that I think has massive playoff implications and also is going to carry a little bit of weight when it comes to seeding purposes, maybe even have a little bit of weight when it comes to the conference title. Then you get to go ahead and play Maine, then on the road against Missouri, a better Missouri team than you remember back when you were Big 12 rivals, close out the year with Alabama at home, and then on the road against LSU. It's not an easy schedule, but it is a manageable one. And if the pieces do hit and this veteran defense is able to take that next step, going from top 25 and top 50 in total yards allowed and in third down coverages and in run defense, and you get up to about top 25 and you get up to about top 30, you're good. You're in good hands, especially if you do see this offense take flight with Jackson Arnold. And then comes the part where it always bothers me. We talk about Steve Sarkisian at Texas, and I'm going to make this abundantly clear for any Longhorn fans that are watching this video. I believe in you. I do think that you will have an opportunity the second you arrive on July 1st to go walk up to the SEC voters table and say, hey, I'm glad I'm at the party. Who's the lowest on the totem pole? Give me their chair. They're sitting at the kiddie table. I believe that wholeheartedly. I also believe that Oklahoma can be there too. And the main reason why is because we live in a world of recency bias. Have you noticed the conversations around Steve Sarkisian as of late? One of the best coaches in college football, an enigma when it comes to offensive personnel, a proven winner that can lead his team to the promised land because he just took you to a conference championship game. Anybody remember the notion around Steve Sarkisian going into the year? Maybe not the long-term solution, potentially another Tom Herman 2.0. We don't know what to expect moving forward. Well, overnight, he's become a hit sensation and a top 10 coach in college football because he already was a top 10 coach in college football. And Brent Venables is a top 25 coach in college football. Whether or not he has proven that he can win the big game doesn't mean he's qualified. And so many people want to go with this term of, well, he hasn't proven it. Well, he hasn't done it yet. Well, it hasn't happened for Brent Venables, so he just is not the right guy. Because of what? Because of it hasn't happened yet? Let's go back and look at Brent Venables' career. Stud defensive player at Kansas State, was able to turn the Wildcats defense around, then goes to Oklahoma, wins countless Big 12 titles, top 25 finishes as a defensive coordinator, multiple top 10 finishes in the AP poll, goes to Clemson, wins several national titles. Oh, and on top of all of that, has a top 25 defense every single year and sends out more NFL draft picks than I send out sleeves of Oreos. That's a winning pedigree. Just because you haven't done it at one spot doesn't mean that it isn't in your fiber being. Just because of you haven't been able to reach the end and cross the finish line does not mean the race is over yet. People want to live in this society and think, well, year one was a fluke. Year two, maybe we see promising results. Year three, going to the SEC 7-5 is what we can expect. Because what? Venables is your coach? You would be lucky to have a coach like Brent Venables at most schools. And I promise you this, the reason he took the job at Oklahoma was because he built up enough net worth to where he could pick and choose where he wanted to be. He could have easily stayed at Clemson for the rest of his life, been one of the most dominant coordinators we have ever seen in college football. But he realized what the opportunity presented itself at a place like Oklahoma, close to his heart, and an area where he became a household name in sports. He couldn't pass it up. So the guy's a proven winner. He just isn't a proven head coach winner. Doesn't mean he can't get there. Just like Steve Sarkisian had to get there. Just like Nick Saban had to get there. Just like Kirby Smart had to get there. And countless other coaches that we are shoving up the world of saying they're elite. Brent Venables can be too. You just got to give it time. So what should be the expectation for Oklahoma going into next year? They are going to be a top 25 team in the AP poll whenever it is released. They are going to be a team that we bring up in conversation as a legit dark horse for the college football playoff and probably a dark horse in the SEC. 9-3 is what I would expect for around Oklahoma. I could see them winning against teams like Tulane, getting an upset over Tennessee, first start in the SEC. And then you drop a game to LSU to close out the year. Then you drop a game to Ole Miss on the road, and you drop a game to Alabama at home. I could easily see that happening. I could see you beating Texas. It's a neutral site location. We've seen what unravels in the Cotton Bowl of Dallas. We know what goes on there. You don't think it can happen again? In a brand new conference where you're returning exceptional defensive talent? Don't give me that. You just don't want to believe because of you like the recency bias. Oklahoma may not be a team in year one that fights for a college football playoff berth or a conference title berth. They may be sitting at home in early December hoping that someone else messes up along the way so they backdoor their way into the college football playoff. That might be the case. But I do believe you have the right coach. You have somebody that understands the culture. NIL is going to be booming in a place like Norman. And probably most important, you have a veteran defense to set the tone in a conference where defensive bouts are going to be a baseline for you. Oklahoma could be the surprise team of college football in 2024. I don't think that they'll run the table through the SEC, but I do think that they will get a few upset wins. I think that we will be talking about the Sooners in a much more stable position going into 2025 than we are going into 2024. It's great that Texas won the Big 12. It's great that Oregon is making strides in the Big 10. And it's great that you have programs like Arizona and Utah carrying weight going into a new conference like the Big 12. But you can't leave out Oklahoma. It's Oklahoma. If with the right pieces, everything is clicking, this is a team that can go far. And I will not be shocked if they surprise everybody and we're going in November and they're about ready to take on Alabama. And that's a game that's going to decide who's going to Atlanta. That's a game that's going to decide who can already say, college football playoff, I'll have one admission, please. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching that video. Don't hit the X button yet. Make sure you hit subscribe to keep up with all of our daily content found on Just Saying It and anything else that we post on this channel. Bye.